Hello, hello, welcome. Today is Sunday. Happy Sunday, happy weekend, happy kitten's birthday. I got two kittens. They're 4 years old today, Vincent and LaFay. So happy birthday. Today's Sunday, June 14th, 2026. Second day on this painting here. Usually I take 3 days to do a painting. It's only 2 days on this one because I didn't have that one single day to draw it out. But today, I may finish this painting today. We'll see. It's, Sunday. I feel like I want to take it a little bit easier. Although I did already produce a video and it's, whatever. It's going to be out there soon, starting some cool stuff. Really kind of excited about what I got coming, up within Twitch and especially YouTube and on my website, chrisbevan.com. Right down there. Check it out. Let's see all my art and everything. Anyway, I want to talk to you about something. I'm a little pissed. I'm a little upset, a little angry at this. This is the way that our world is kind of going, especially for artists. And yeah, okay, let me show you my screen. So I use Google, okay, to back up all my photos from my phone. And it's great because I take a picture of my artwork here that's on my board, right? And then, it gets automatically up to the cloud and then I can pull it up on my iPad, blah, 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 blah. Everything works seamlessly. It's super nice. I do like that part of Google, but look at this. I took this picture of Vinny. There's Vincent. I love Vincent. I love you so much, puppy. Yeah, I love my cats. I want to show you LaFay because it's their birthday today. And this is not what I'm pissed out about. I'll get into the whole what I'm pissed off about in a moment. Here they are. Look at them. They're so cute. There's my kitties. And look, we call her a squirrel. And Google thinks that's a squirrel too. That's so funny. Our little squirrel, baby squirrel. She's so cute. Yeah, okay. What I'm pissed off is this. So they took this beautiful picture of my kitty, of Vincent, and Google made a painting out of it right away. And I know, it's like, this is AI generated imagery. They're doing it automatically. And I'm like, could I paint Vincent that well? Not that exact, probably not. And people will eat this up. Is it a good painting of a cat? Yeah, it's pretty good. I can't sit there and say, no, this is a bad painting. And it looks exactly like a painting, like even with like the glare and the black, when you take a picture of it, there's some problems here in the coat and AI. AI is going to be taking over all art stuff in the future. And it's really annoying. It is really annoying. Okay. We have to be really careful because we're getting to a point right now where it's almost impossible to tell if anything is AI anymore. And it's pervasive everywhere. We get people that are sharing AI images constantly because it's totally, it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. And most people are like, oh, it's okay. It's just AI generated stuff. But no, it's not okay. Do a little bit of research into all the server farms and how it is really bad for the communities where these huge server farms are going in. And it will be the next huge environmental disaster on this planet due to like an energy crisis. And it's absolutely awful. Yeah. Tirade over for AI slop BS, and every big company's like, yeah, we need it without even thinking about the future ramifications. Okay, anyway, don't paint my cat. I will paint my cat. Hopefully in Google someplace I can turn that off so it doesn't do that. Yeah, don't use your AI. Don't want to contribute to the degradation of Earth because you just want to show me a cool picture of my cat. Although I love pictures of my cats anyways. Anyway, okay. Today we're talking about how to go slow, how to work slowly, and go fast at the same time. And you're like, that doesn't make any sense, Chris. Well, painting isn't about moving your hand really fast, in a lot of ways. Yeah, if we're trying to paint expressively, of course, we're going to be moving our arm a little bit faster, maybe flicking things, but those strokes are very planned out, very planned. Okay. We have this understanding of what we want to do and we plan it out. But 99% of the time, the best paintings that I've ever made have been when I'm very focused and, there's not a lot of distractions. I'm not on a stream, not being distracted from streaming. And I'm just focusing on the painting. Um, Not even any music in the background. Everything is focused. And I'm sitting there and I'm methodically thinking about each thing and putting it down. And not only are those my best paintings, but those are usually my fastest paintings because there is no fixing. A lot of times when we move too quickly, what we're doing is we're putting things down in the wrong place. Usually it's all about placement and maybe an incorrect edge, maybe an incorrect value or color. Like the things that we are doing are, have wrongness in them, things we don't like, whatever. I always talk about right and wrong. There's not really any right and wrong in painting any longer. There's just what I think I would rather have and what I would think I would not have in the painting. So it's all subjective. But we put things down in the wrong place with the wrong value, with the, in all these ways what we don't like, right? If we're moving too fast, we're just moving through it. We can make the painting look expressive and beautiful in that way without like moving our arm around really fast. And we'll get through a painting a lot faster. We'll make it a lot faster and probably a lot better because it'll look fresh. Every stroke we put down is where we want it. It'll look interesting because we're thinking about everything that we're putting down. And I'm doing that now. Even though I'm talking a bunch, what I'm thinking here is you can see my reference right there at the top. My focal point is this hand and the back and the folds surrounding this. So I'm slowing down. Yesterday, I was moving faster. I had a lot of energy. And at the end of the painting session, I was unhappy with a lot of what I put down. Because of that, I was moving a little bit too fast. So we're going to slow down today. I got smaller brushes and we're going to focus on the focal point and really think about all that goes into the painting itself, each brush stroke as we put it down. I'm thinking about, the edge of the brush stroke that I put down, soft on one side, hard on the other. I'm thinking about the value, the saturation, the hue, everything that is with color. Excuse me, I'm going to check out some of the chats to make sure nothing crazy is going on. It says my stream is unstable on Twitch. I think I'm a little unstable. The stream is probably more stable than I am, I'm sure. I do remember that I scraped out a lot of this at the very end of the stream yesterday so that I could utilize the transparency and, that paper showing through to get a really nice glow here in the fabric. And what's happening with this, what I don't care for in this painting is everything's kind of the same. There's the same brushwork everywhere. And it's getting away from the focal point. It's not really drawing anybody into the focal point. And so I want to harden up some edges. I want to make some edges a lot harder here. And in my focal point specifically, and think about the turning of all these forms, the change in direction of the light, how it flows over the top of the folds within this fabric and try and express that within paint. And I'm just going for it. I'm just, starting slowly right around my focal point. I'm specifically doing this part because I really like this first. And I'm going to put the hand over it and then the back behind that. Of course, I should probably do the back first, back, whatever is furthest in the back, like background first usually, and then put things over it. But it's okay. I have a lot of experience with doing the background and foreground at the same time and messing with that texture in those edges so that it still looks accurate in some way. Now I am moving beyond the 3 here because yesterday I established this idea that I was going to do value 1 through 8. Now I'm going to remove that. And I'm going to do, I was going to do value 3 through 8, but now I'm going to do value 1 through, and actually I need to test this because I was thinking about it. I wanted to do it. This is value 8 here. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or value 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah. So that's value 8, but I want to lighten it up a bit. So this is our background color, which is ivory black and titanium white. And I always forget at the beginning, I should always tell you what materials I'm working with. This is Winsor Newton Winton student brand paint. I like painting with inexpensive paint. I'm working with a Zorn palette, titanium white, yellow ochre, cadmium red, light hue. I don't work with heavy metals or solvents, and ivory black. Okay. So, and what I want to do is test this. Okay, what value is this first? Is it here? Nope. We're all the way up here. We're in between those two. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Between 6 and 7. Let's go a little bit lighter, right to value 6, and see how this looks. I want to bring this all the way up. You see how much lighter that is? So much different in value. And this will cause me to bring every other value up as well. And I want some compression within this value range. And in a lot of places, if I choose to, in the body or in this fabric, if I choose to not bring that value up, I can lose some edges and bring even more interest into it. I really enjoy doing this. I enjoy playing with those values and translating my reference. I think that's so important to translate your reference rather than painting directly from it, than copying from it exactly. And really kind of finding our own artistic voice simply and easily by just affecting the fundamentals in small ways. Just by saying to myself, okay, if I see the black or the really dark values in my reference, that's going to, my brain is going to adjust that value to my darkest dark, which is number 6 here. And then everything has to compress relatively within itself with the idea of that compression of value range. So all my darker areas get darker and the lighter areas get lighter. Is it going to be a great painting by doing this? I don't know. I've done paintings like this before and they turned out really nice. And I think I like it better already. And I think that's the important thing, great painting or not, good painting or not. Do we like it? Do we feel fulfilled within it? Yeah. I think that's super important. What do we like about it? Like I was saying, there's no right and wrong in art anymore. There's no right and wrong. There, it's so subjective. It's all about what do I want to do? What do I like? And how can I make that happen on my painting? It's not about what other people want, what other people think is the best painting. It's about what I think is a better painting. You know, as I'm going through this, as I'm putting down this value and looking at the hair of the figure in all these darker areas, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to raise all those values up. I'm keeping it gray though. I'm keeping it gray. I should probably warm this up just a little bit with some red because it's hair. So I could probably change that hue a little bit to separate the hair a bit more from the background. Let's do that. But I always have to remember, or we always have to remember, that when we're mixing up paint, we're constantly adjusting the hue, the value, and the saturation. And so whatever color we add, like I want it to stay the same value. You see, this is like a gray on the right and red on the left. It's the same value, but we're changing the saturation. We're going more into a reddish color, and it's a bit more saturated. But because I added like this, like a red and a yellow ochre, it's going to try and bring that value up, higher value. So I need to bring it back down with a little bit more black, right? A little bit more black. Not painting very thickly right now either. Putting it down pretty thin. A little bit warmer. A little bit warmer. Just barely touching that red because I know that red, it's a cad red hue, cad red light hue. It has a very high tinting strength compared to all the other colors on my palette. So you got to barely touch it. If I pulled out too much of that, it's going to change this color way too much. So I have to be careful. Be careful. I'm pretty happy with the drawing. There's a few things that are a little wonky on it. The technical term, wonky, right? Okay, that gives me an idea of where that's going. What I might do here, well, what I need to do is get some more white. I'm done with my white. What I might do is put a little bit more of that hair, the lighter areas of the hair, because I lightened up the shadow areas. Now I have to lighten up the light areas on this hair as well to get that turn in form to describe the hair a bit more, to separate the background from the foreground with their hair. And I can do it pretty simply. I don't need to sit there and do every single strand. We look at hair as, you know, in its fullness. The shape that a multitude of hair strands make. And then think about that shape a bit more. Okay, where this transparency is coming through, I need to remove that because it's distracting a little bit much. It's pulling away from the focal point a bit much. Now, what's interesting about compressing your value range in a lot of ways is you can make colors seem different, not by adjusting the value when they're so close, but by adjusting the hue or saturation just a little bit. They could be exact same value, but you just barely adjust that saturation, and then you have a turn of form. You have a difference between the two. I think, you know, that works in very subtle ways, but not in, you know, situations where there's a really big value change or high contrast in a lot of ways. Okay, let's get some more white. I like to scrape my palette because those areas of color that I just put my brush into, they're going to have, especially in the whites, going to get adjusted. And I scrape off all of that and I put down some pure white. I see artists, amazing artists, has no commentary on how amazing they are or are not, but I see a lot of artists with like 2 or 20 pounds of paint left on their palette to dry. And I'm like, I could not do that. I mean, they make absolutely beautiful work with that. And you get a lot of artists that have just the paint that was dried on there and it's really thin and it just makes like this patina of color on the palette. Nicholas Uribe does that, and I'm totally fine with that. It's the artists that leave like little mountains of paint everywhere that I just, I don't know. I want to run for the hills. I'm like, oh my gosh, how are you doing that? I'm a bit clean of a painter. That's the way I paint. It's the way they paint. And there's amazing artists around here that I've seen over the years that just throw the paint everywhere all the time, just like it's getting on them, it's on the floor, it's on the walls, it's everywhere. But their paintings are gorgeous. Their paintings are absolutely beautiful. Can't fault them for it. That's the way they paint. There's no one right way. There's no one wrong way. And I want a sharp brush for that. It's going to be a bigger brush. But I want those really sharp edges. So I'm going to get a flat. This is a rosemary brush. And I do say I like working with inexpensive materials. But the rosemary brush here is probably one of the best brushes I think you can buy. Supposedly. I mean, I really love the super cheap Artsmith brushes that you can get. Well, you can't get them anymore because they were at Joann Fabrics, which is closed down now. And they're a few cents a piece, but for some reason I like them a lot. But I do have some expensive brushes, mainly for me to kind of like test. Because I want to figure out, okay, what's the difference? Can I paint better with this super expensive brush? And honestly, right now with all the changes in brush prices and everything, these brushes are not very expensive. They're comparative to what's out there. So carefully moving through this, I still have to remind myself to squint down, look at the big areas, and do think about those. Getting too dark there. Think about these larger areas of shadow shapes versus light shapes. And in a lot of these places, especially in fabric, you'll get a higher saturation of reflected light or subsurface scattering, where if the fabric is really thin, the light will pass through the fabric and it will get like much higher in saturation. So thinking about that, trying to get a lot of that in there. Just focusing down in a lot of ways and really thinking as I'm painting about each and every stroke. How can I do this simply but accurately at the same time? Finding the balance between the two. This is an idea that I've been working on for the past several paintings, where it's all about finding the balance between expressiveness and accuracy. And I don't have a better word for that. I don't think accuracy is the best word to use within that, because you can see a lot of paintings where they're not like the drawing isn't accurate. It doesn't look exactly like the person, but it's still a fantastic painting. You take the painting, you look at it as if, just by itself without looking at the person that they're painting or the object that they're painting, where you don't care anymore about likeness or the exact copy from the image. And you say, yeah, it doesn't really look exactly like their reference, but man, it's an absolutely beautiful painting. And I'm thinking a lot about like how that happens. How like our own kind of sensibilities and styles come in to adjust what we're seeing and how we translate what we're seeing into an absolutely beautiful painting. But it's departed so much from the reference as well. I think that's, that idea I think is pretty fun. How do I achieve that? And this is not something like, oh, let me just do one painting and then I'll understand it. I'll figure it out with one painting. No, I mean, this is going to be, I really think this is like the next level of artists. And you can reference, John Singer Sargent, Sorolla, Ben Hope, Alex Kanefsky, Anne Gale, all these amazing artists. There were representational artists that do this. And you see how amazing their paintings are, but then you're like, oh, they're not getting likenesses. They're just making an expressively beautiful painting. Look how amazing that is. Simply, easily. And I think it takes, years of training to figure that out. It's the end stage of, or the next stage. I don't know what an end stage is for painting, right? I have no idea what that is. There's no mastery. It's just a horizon in front of you. And Rembrandt's always on that horizon, looking back at you and laughing. There are certain beats in the painting, I think, and I'm starting to see this more and more often, where how we work through a painting, like the speed at which we work through a painting. Now I'm actually talking about like the rhythm of mixing, matching, putting the stroke down. And I do think that rhythm, although I'm not focusing on that rhythm right now, I'm going slowly. I think that rhythm does affect how our painting turns out. There are times when it's like, oh, well, this, you can feel the slowness within it. Kind of a weird concept, right? Now, if I keep going at this pace right now, which feels like a snail's pace, honestly, I feel like I'm just going really slow and this painting is going to take days and months to complete. But there's been so many times when I work at this pace and it's like meditative in a lot of ways, and I'm just putting it down as I see it, just moving through the reference, the image, and making decisions and translating what I see. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm done. I finished it all. I don't see anything else within the painting that I want to adjust. Like, I got it all in there and I'm happy with it. And it's really interesting how that happens. Like, if we focus on, how slow we're moving, how methodical we are, it feels like this is going to take forever. But if we keep just taking those steps, step, it almost sneaks up on us to a point where we're like, okay, It's done. Wow, we got to that a lot faster than I thought I would. It felt like I was going super slow, but no, it was. Um, Looking for a word that I lost. It tricked us. That's not the word I wanted. It tricked us into thinking we were going so slow, but we were just going accurately and purposefully. And we got there. It's like walking, like a purposefully movement forward, inevitable, glacial. But it happened. One thing I want to do on this stream that I'm trying to do in my daily practice, because I do art every single day. I've done it every single day for the past 4,888 days. Done it every day. Something. At least 30 minutes of drawing. That's my rule. At least 30 minutes of something every single day. Could be even like creating a composition or your next composition. But the one thing I wanted to do on this stream is kind of just socialize, this process. And honestly, I'm not just doing this for your benefit. That's part of it. But mainly for my own benefit, because I know that talking through these ideas and verbalizing what I'm doing is making me, hopefully, is making me a better teacher, giving me a better understanding of who I am as an artist and what I'm doing. And I think that's oh so important. Now, the interesting thing about all these folds is, I mean, we could get lost in them, totally lost in all this information that's here. And it's like, oh my gosh, where was I? I was working on some fold somewhere and I mixed up a color. And in between mixing that color and going back to my painting, I've lost my place, moving through all that complexity. But we really don't have to think about it that way. We could also think about how can we express the compression of all of these folds in a more simplified way, not actually doing every single fold, but maybe just a few of them. So it indicates to our viewer, hey, the fabric is bunched up here. Do you need to see the perfection that is all that the reference has within all that information? No, you really don't. I'm giving you the poetic version of this. And I like that this paint, even after, from yesterday, it's still a bit wet. I can scrape into it on these edges, bring in some more of that texture. What I need is a value that's really close to my lightest light, so I can bring some subtle differences within a lot of these edges. Not so sharp. And I do want to feel the turn of that fabric, how it's wrapping around the arm. I don't feel that right now. It doesn't feel like that. I do enjoy, like, there's this part where the arm is catching like a highlight and it almost blends in with the fabric. There's even like some tassels and stuff that are all around here. I'm ignoring those. Totally not painting those. Those are distracting from the bigger idea of that fabric. You don't have to paint every single thing that you see. What you do is you look at it and you say, okay, is that going to distract away from my focal point? Is it necessary that I paint that? And if it is, paint it. Paint it to your best ability. If your purpose for your painting is photorealism, hyper photorealism, then you're going to be there for days on just the smallest little part. And you're going to be loving life because that's what you like to paint. And that's okay. But having that direction, having that specific intention that you've set, where you've said to yourself, this is what I want to do with this painting. I've said to people before, why are you painting all that detail? And they're like, oh, because it's there. And then I'm like, no, wake up. Wake up. Painting isn't about, or creating art isn't about just copying exactly what you see all the time. At the beginning, we do that. At the beginning, that's all we know. That's how we move through the process of understanding, life around us, is by copying it as exactly as we can. But we have to get to that point, and this is my opinion, obviously. I feel like we have to get to that point where we begin to translate, where we begin to become the artists that we want to be and how we want to interpret the world. And then, obviously, or maybe not obviously, that's the terrible word. Nothing's ever obvious, right? If you're a hyper photorealist and that's your choice, then heck yeah, you're going to be copying everything exactly. And you're going to be enjoying it. And that's perfectly fine. For me, and maybe that's how I should move through this language, is talk about, like, for me, this is what I want to do. And I'm on this journey of figuring out how to do that. I do like this fold that's like coming out extra here. Hopefully I'm not talking too softly, because when I'm focusing on something, I tend to get very soft with my voice. Everybody that's watching, I'm putting you to sleep. It's like, oh, I listened to Chris Bevan's live stream where he's talking about his painting to go to sleep at night. It's actually pretty nice. I mean, I've tried all the drugs on the planet, but to put myself to sleep. But man, Chris, he puts you to sleep instantly. I mean, it's just so tremendously boring. I've never experienced anything so boring. It's within seconds, I'm just out. Yeah, maybe that's what I'm doing right now. And if that's it, I'm very happy to provide that service for you. You're welcome. You're welcome. Relax, paint, fall asleep. It can't always be exciting. I wanted this to always be exciting. But I mean, you're not in my brain right now. And every single little fold that I'm looking at, it gets a little bit darker here. The edges that I'm thinking of, there's that transition of the larger idea of the form, how this fabric is flowing around an arm, is super exciting to me. But it's like a more like an intimate, exciting. I don't know how else to explain it. And this is why on Twitch and YouTube streams, right, you see nothing but people playing video games all the time, because that's what's most interesting. That gets all the dopamine. And it is interesting. I mean, I watch people playing video games because I do Guild Wars 2. That's like my main drug as far as games go. And it's a lot of fun. Totally cool. but it's very hard to socialize this process and make it so it's not like watching paint dry. So I feel like the only way that I can do that, the only way that I feel like I can like socialize this and keep it interesting is to continually kind of like move through it with my voice and understanding within myself about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. For example, I see these folds down here that got larger, okay, in this area. And I love that like difference. This is a perfect place to transition from a lot of detail in these folds to where we're transitioning into like really big, larger forms and thinking less about detail and thinking more about how can I express um, the look of these folds in a different way. Can I speak about, the that transition, the largeness of this area in the folds without having to, worry about every little tiny transition in the value range or the color. So simplifying and talking about the bigger idea. And what I was talking about before, where there's like this transition and saturation or hue rather than value, is like, this is pretty dark here, but I think it would be better to differentiate the two is that if I lightened it up and then went with like a more saturated kind of warm color here to separate like the top area of this arm and that the folds and the bottom, really compressing that value range but leaning more heavily on saturation. And I'm transitioning brushes in a lot of places to not only for size of the brush to get into certain areas, but also for texture. I know that I can get like a softer texture with this brush rather than the other brush that I had. So you can see how I'm slowing down on this. Every stroke, every little stroke that we put down on a painting, there's so many things that come along with it. I mean, we could talk about color and, there's value, hue, saturation, all three of those. And then you have the edges that are on it as well. And every stroke does that. So before I even put something down, I'm thinking, okay, did I mix up the color that I want? Is it have the right value that I want? And now, what am I going to do with the edges on this brush stroke when I put it down? Where is it going to be soft? Where is it going to be hard? Where should I leave it transparent? Leave a lot of that showing, a lot of the color that's already there showing through. That's another thing. Like if you already have a color on your canvas or paint on your canvas, how do I need to adjust what I'm mixing up so that when it mixes what's already down, the resulting value and color will end up to where I want it. So much that goes into it, every little stroke. And if you're not doing it, it's not very exciting. But when I'm here doing it, it feels really exciting. Maybe one day, if I do this enough, I mean, the streaming, because I do daily art every day anyways. If I do the streaming, maybe I'll figure out a way to make this more exciting. Like this careful process, not like, I mean, I could sit here and like get a huge painting and be in a big, massive studio and have music blaring or something like that. And I'm getting really physical and throwing paint around. And that would be one way of making this more exciting. But that's not how I paint. There's always this point where we have to make decisions as an artist to determine, what's best for us as artists. What's the best way to move through this art thing that we are socializing, so that we can find that balance between ourselves. Too red, too red. That skin tone is way too red. The way we can find a balance between our authentic selves, the authenticity that we want within the painting process, and interesting ways to share it, like artistic ways to share it with everyone else. I would say, like, the skin tone of this is so close to the fabric. I can make it so much more closer. I could be more subtle with that. So start with more yellow ochre and white and a little bit of black, because our skin, well, the skin on this figure and this light specifically is not super saturated, but just add barely a little bit of red within there to make it different. And I'll probably have a painting that speaks more about subtlety and looks a bit more, what's the word I'm looking for here? A bit more thoughtful, I would say, rather than kind of garish. There's a tendency for, lots of artists, let me go for the brightest color ever. Super saturation. Van Gogh. I love Van Gogh. And I do. I love Van Gogh. But honestly, I mean, I'm a painter that paints with a lot of grays. I don't do a lot of deep, high saturation. Maybe in the focal point, because that's what we get into is, I love Van Gogh's paintings, but they're flat. They're very flat. It's an intentional thing. It is about coloration. Well, I mean, his later works, the last 6 years of his life, were all the paintings that we see, but no one talks about or looks at most of his earlier works. Those weren't that good. That's not the Van Gogh we know. All gray and muddy colors. Yeah, that's Van Gogh too. No, we want to put Van Gogh in a box, see him as a certain way. Nope, you can't. Sorry. It's one reason why I love Andy Warhol. What he did for, contemporary art was wonderful. Where he's like, you know what? I'm going to do soup cans, and then I'm going to do pictures or photos or whatever. And then I'm going to go on to this other thing, and then that other thing. And you know what? I can do that. I can do this as an artist. You're not going to put me in a little box. You're not going to hold me to this standard that I have to stick to for the rest of my life. What's the artist that did the scrape paintings, like with a big squeegee? German artist. Oh my gosh. I know his name, but I've forgotten it. Darn it. I hate when I forget names like that. Anyway, the reason why I was going to talk about that artist is he did the same thing. He'd have these like hyper photorealistic paintings and then these super abstract paintings. And he's like, yeah, I'm both this and that. I don't have to be just this abstract painter. And I can show both at the same time in the same museum, right? Love that. But I mean, most of society wants to understand artists simply and easily. They want to understand things like a company that's marketing to you. That's what they want. That's what society is used to because we've been marketed to for forever. I don't know why I'm talking about this. I should be talking about my painting. But anyway, the important thing I want to get into on that is be your authentic self. Don't feel like you have to be someone else just to get attention. If you're doing that, eventually you'll burn out because you're not really doing you. And that's what we want. We want more of you on this planet. That's the only way that you can be new and different is by being nothing but yourself as completely and utterly as you can. Doing a stupid live stream and talking through your painting. So I'm going through the back here on the figure, and I'm slowly moving all of those value or colors away from a more warm red and closer to like a yellow ochre, grayish yellow, really, in a lot of places. I'm getting very exact with this, very exact. I'm afraid, like I feel like the painting needs this. I really want to do it this way right now. But I'm afraid that at some point I'm going to look back or step back and go, you know what? I got too detailed within this. And that's fine too, because we're working with oil paint. It'll stay wet and I can soften out a lot of things, go back in with bigger strokes and simplify again. I want to push that gray. There's a point in the arm here where we're transitioning from back to like the side of the back and some of that arm, and it goes to gray. So I want to like activate my inner another artist that I'm forgetting, my inner Rubens, and see if I can go straight to gray, like when that form turns right there, maybe a little bit lighter. If I had an ultramarine blue, I could totally make that a little bit cooler, but that's okay. The great thing about the Zorn palette or any palette like this, it's very simple, limited in a lot of ways. The great thing about these limited palettes is there's a harmony throughout the entirety of the palette. I mean, there's no way. I mean, I guess I could put just a straight red on the canvas, you know, as my accent color, right? And it would look a bit like a wrong note on the canvas. I could probably do that. But for the most part, this palette will keep everything harmonious. It'll keep you from making a color that just feels like a really bad note that's incongruent from everything else in the painting. Man, I almost fell over. Try not to get my head in front of I have to move my napkins someplace else because reaching over that far to get them, I'm going to fall over on the stream one day. There you go. That'll make it exciting. See, look at that edge there. You see that edge here? See how sharp that is? And then look at the reference, you know, right at that point. No, that needs to soften up. Maybe it doesn't need to get darker. Like that color right there is darker than the darkest dark I want. Even the face will get lightened up. It'll probably blend into that darker area. But definitely softening that edge is going to be important. So I want all this red that I had to go to like a yellowy green color. All up in here. Poof, right there. I can go a little bit darker, I think. a little bit grayer as well. Darker and grayer. And pulling out all of that red that we have up in here. I really wasn't paying attention on yesterday's session to the hue of the skin, and I went way too warm with it. Gonna bring it back to where it needs to go. Okay, okay. Small areas, being very exact. Now, there's several ways that you can transition between edges, like to soften this edge out. I could sit there with a brush and I could like feather this out by blending, and that's usually where we go most of the time. That's where that happens. Like, that's our progression normally. Oh, if we want to soften an edge, we do it physically. We physically soften that edge by blending. But we don't have to soften edges that way. We could also soften by just having a bunch of hard edges that transition slowly with their value range from one place to the next. And that would also soften. Or the combination of the two. Doesn't have to be just one. And I have this brush is like splayed out too much. I want a sharper edge brush. Let's go to this guy. And I do like this core shadow here, the terminator that happens. So we go from the top of the back to the side of the back here, and it gets dark within this terminator, and then back to lighter as we get into more reflected light with inside the shadow. So doing that, but at the same time, having that subtle transition of values and compressing my value range so it's not as dark as what I see in the reference, like all at once. Yeah, it's hard. Really awesome challenge there. I can go a little bit darker, but let's try not going darker, but changing the hue so it's a little bit more red. Well, that is darker actually. Change that hue so it's a little bit more red within the terminator of this form shadow. And that will give the idea of that terminator and that transition, I think. Yeah, definitely. That's better. It's subtle. So subtle. Okay, looking pretty good. Looking pretty good. I there's several friend artists around here that I try and help out as much as I can. And the one thing that I notice, especially when we're starting out with oil painting, I did this for years. Um, we have so much going on with hue, value, color, edges, just dealing with mixing paint, blah, 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 like all this stuff in our head that we have, we can't really think about all of that all at once. So we begin to simplify our process down into just, into copying exactly what we're seeing in a very smooth way. And our brain is not able to deal with all the information well enough that we could get into this mode of translating as well as we're painting. So we kind of cut that out. We're not translating, we're just doing everything we see exactly the way we see it. And I think just understanding that, I think, is really huge. And going, okay, yeah, just, when I'm trying to simplify, plus all this other stuff right now, it's a bit too much for me right now. So all I'm going to do is stick with, this detail, and then slowly try and move away from it as I get more and more accustomed to having so much in my brain all at once. I'm trying to understand the form of this back and how it turns. And I'm trying to figure out, value ranges, because we have to go very light up here, plus removing all of that red. I want to pull the redness out, have just a little bit in there. These very subtle transitions. And they're even more subtle because we're compressing our value range. So I may have to lose a lot of it. It's kind of, if you look at photos that someone takes and they're kind of blown out, like the exposure, it's overexposed, you'll start losing detail within the light areas. It just, it starts with the lightest light, and then that just starts spreading throughout the whole photo. And soon, like, the light area, the half tone, and then all the way pretty close to the shadow area turns into nothing but the brightest white, just white, right? And so when we're compressing our value range, that's going to happen. It's kind of like an optical thing. Maybe it is optical. I don't know. I don't know the exact science behind it. This is what I observe to be true. Okay. Continually, you'll see me turn and look at the stream because it's digital and it's a bit faded. It's, it's almost like I'm squinting at it. It's always helping me understand, like, the bigger picture. I mean, the other thing I can do is get up out of my chair and stand back or lean way back here. And that's helpful too. I love looking at the digital image. I think that helps me get away from everything. Find that different perspective of looking at the painting. We paint for so long on something that we can't see any of the problems anymore. It just everything becomes like ubiquitous. And then, with painting while sitting down is always an issue. But I like painting and sitting down, so I'm going to continue doing it. And then I just deal with, like, other ways to move away from the painting so I can see the bigger picture again. Make sure you're doing that as much as you can when you're working. Because I know, usually what happens is I'm here right up on my painting, and then I'll step back. Oh, I think I'm done. And then I'll step back, look at the painting, and go, oh my God, who painted that? What happened to the wonderful painting that was, 2 feet away from it? But then when I back up away from it, I've lost all the bigger ideas. And it's become, some other crappy painting. No, that could be a lot lighter. Definitely. Even further. I'm always thinking about how I put paint on the canvas as well. The texture of what I'm painting comes into it. Also, the direction of form. And I'm thinking about the paint itself. A lot of times, our main purpose, as I was talking about before, is not thinking of this as a painting, like it's actually paint, but our purpose is to turn this paint into something that looks exactly like the subject that we're looking at. But that's not always necessary. If you look at so many artists that we think of in our heads as being very detailed artists, very looking deeply into those details and describing everything exactly how it is what they're looking at. Oof, that is not what I wanted to do. Should have cleaned out that brush a bit more. But we look at those artists and we'll begin to understand, like, oh, they're not as detailed as I thought. See, lost that. I need to scrape all of that off, and I don't think I can get back to white. It stained that too much. Okay. Gonna have to make an adjustment there. One stroke. Ruined. Painting ruined. No, just kidding. We can get back to it. We'll do fine. It's okay. But thinking about how the paint looks on the canvas as well. And, there's this conversation that we're having with the painting and with how we describe each and every form that we put down. If you could think of brushstrokes as maybe letters or words, okay? And each brushstroke is building a sentence through letters or words. And if we use the same brush over and over again and make the same stroke over and over again, we're basically talking in a very monotone way. We're talking with our brush and it looks the same with every single brushstroke we put on. And maybe we don't want that. Maybe we do, or maybe we don't. But it becomes pretty boring, right? There's a very boring thing there. I mean, we wouldn't talk to someone like that if we wanted to have an exciting painting, an exciting moment in the painting. We would adjust our brush stroke in a different way, all the brush strokes in different ways to try and express that excitement. The same as if, you change the timbre or the volume of your voice. So you're like, this is so awesome. And then you're like really quiet. This is the quiet part of the painting, So really kind of thinking about how every stroke goes down in that way and backing up and going, oh, okay, these are the quiet moments, but this needs to be an expressive moment. Here, I need to hide all of my brush strokes so that they're so subtle. But then here, I need the crescendo, the cymbal, the crashing chord at the end. So my brush strokes are going to be a bit more wild and crazy. But right now, for me, it's quiet. This is a quiet area. The calm before the storm, and the storm maybe is definitely in this fabric. That's where the storm is. You see the difference between, staccato here and then softness there, maybe too soft. Actually, on the video's not doing that justice. Yeah, that's my excuse. It's the camera. The camera's making it look terrible, I swear. I need some background to come back in. That gray, is this the correct gray? Yeah, that's close enough. It's maybe a little bit warm, but that's fine. There's a dip between the spinal cord here and their scapula that I actually just love. That little change just says all the difference between I am a scapula and I am a spine. Like every single brushstroke we put down, we're saying something. How is it affecting your painting? If you sit there for a half an hour and you've put down a bunch of brushstrokes and you all of a sudden you wake up and you look at your painting and you're like, what have I done for a half an hour? Yeah, maybe that's time to kind of like, okay, let's put the brushes down for a moment. Let's think about what I want to get into, what's necessary. This is what this video is all about, like slowing down and focusing to go fast, doing it right the first time, thinking about what we're doing as we do it. And I know there's a lot of artists out there that would like listen to this and say, I hate that. I want to, actually, some friends around here, some amazing artists around here that paint with excitement. And it's like, they'd rather go to a Zumba class than a yoga class. And that's where they get all of their exercise and enjoyment from, is Zumba. But you try to get them into a yoga class and they're like, oh, I fell asleep. I totally fell asleep. It's the same for their painting. They're painting as if they're in Zumba, right? They have this crazy music going. Maybe it's completely quiet, but in their body and their hands and their head, there's all this just energy. And it's great. And knowing that about yourself, I think, is really important. Absolutely knowing that. And then also trying to paint a little bit differently, because a lot of times we think, oh, I know this about myself. This is the way I like to paint. I ran into this a lot of times where, I think, okay, this is me. This is how I like to paint. And then later on, I start questioning it. And I'm like, maybe I should try and paint that other way to further solidify that my original intent, my original idea of who I think I am as an artist becomes even more concrete. That's the great thing about trying different ways of painting, different materials, different ideas, is not that, we're just questioning ourselves to see if we're right or wrong, but to further solidify who we are as artists. There was a time in my art career, like 2003, I think, where I was like, I think everything I'm doing is so unauthentic. Like everything was so influenced. It felt like super influenced by everything that I look at online or whatever, that I didn't even know who I was as an artist. So it was a bit of a crisis. So I decided to stop what I was doing and then just explore and try all kinds of different things, to move away from figure for a bit, to try landscapes. I did pet portraits. I did all kinds of crazy stuff. All in the idea that maybe when I come back to figure, if that happens, that I will realize that, yes, I was correct. And this is definitely who I am and what I love to do. And that's exactly what happened. Because eventually, after like almost a year of painting different things, I came back to figure. And it was like coming home. It was the best thing ever. And I realized right away that that's exactly what I needed to do. Oh, someone trying to spam my channel with your stupid spam. There you go. You're banned with your little bot. Stop doing that on Twitch. I get more of that on Twitch than any place else. No worries. Go away. And the funny thing is they're trying to sell AI stuff when I was just complaining about it at the beginning of the stream. A little bit lighter at the top of that scapula. Such subtle transitions throughout all that. Probably maybe a little bit too subtle in some places. I could probably darken it up here to really turn that form like the back is flowing down into the hand. Don't really feel that form as of yet, how the back is turning. Let's play around with the hand for a bit. The hand is definitely way off from everything I've done. And holy crap, it just grabbed a huge chunk of yellow ochre. I know that was going to affect everything that I just did. Now, hands and faces will be warmer, closer to red than anything else. This hand is definitely, getting into those redder tones. So I'm going to follow that idea, that separation. It's kind of like when we're painting a face, on the nose, we'll have your most saturated reds, like the lips. The lips are super saturated, but the values are here, especially at the top of these fingers, are blending in with that back almost perfectly. And I'm going to push that. I'm going to say, ooh, I see that it's almost blending in. Like when I squint, it just about goes away and I lose, those edges. Well, I'm going to push it. I'm going to see what happens if I go ahead and I lose those edges completely. What does it look like? I can always bring it back. Not a big deal. Those fingers just blend into the back, Do I need that information? I think the shadow shapes are going to do more than are going to describe this hand just enough. All I need. I could be wrong though. I could totally be wrong. I want kind of like a purple. Getting into like a light purple. It's hard to get a purple from ivory black and cadmium red. It's all about what colors are surrounding that will say purple or not. Yeah, very subtle. Right as the light transitions into the shadow, that's where saturation really comes in. See, that's very saturated red that I mixed up. Got some drawing issues here, definitely. I'm dealing with hands. It's probably the most detailed thing in this whole painting is this darn hand. This is, again, a place where, hey, I'm drawing a hand, you're drawing as you're painting. You got to slow down and think about where each stroke of paint is going to go so that you put it in the right place. Not that I want to paint this hand perfectly exact like the photo, but at least do two things. Make it look like a hand. So people say, oh, that's a cool hand there. Or I say, that's a cool hand. Who cares what people think? So I say, hey, that's a cool hand. But then at the same time, it's not distracting away from focal point. Hey, Lewis, I see that you made some comments. I'll get to you in a moment. Or right now. Hi, Chris. Can't be here for long. I wanted to pop in and ask, what are your thoughts on Rembrandt oil paint? Bro, autocorrect, not autocorrecting. I like Rembrandt. I actually have my ultramarine blue. Here, I'll pull up two paints here because that's a good question. And I have them here. So this is Royal Talons is the company that makes Rembrandt oil paint. Sorry, I got like this T on tape over it for transparent. And that's one thing about Rembrandt that you'll find a lot is It's good paint. It has a lot of pigment to it. I mean, it's a professional paint, so it has more pigment than a lot of paints, right? But it moves around a lot. And the similar brand to that would be M. Graham is very similar as well. I would put those in the same boat as far as viscosity. So yeah, Rembrandt paint is wonderful to paint with. Like if you want a paint that moves around easily, meaning a lower viscosity, like it definitely, and in some ways I kind of like Rembrandt better than M. Graham, because the problem I have with M. Graham is you go to squeeze it out and the oil is separated from the paint in a lot of places. And then you get liquid coming out of the tube. And it's really annoying, especially on a vertical palette. So that's a lot of problems I had with M. Graham, but it does, that's what you get for your viscosity. Now, Rembrandt, it's been a while since I've painted with a lot of Rembrandt paints, but I don't remember Rembrandt doing that, where you get a lot of that oil coming out. But viscosity is pretty nice on Rembrandt, very similar to M. Graham, probably exactly the same. And it really depends on you. Every material depends on you and how you like to paint, or like what kind of painting you want to make. If your painting or your subject matter says, hey, you need paint that moves around a lot with a higher viscosity, I always get those mixed up, where it moves around easily, closer to liquid. I think that's higher viscosity. If your painting needs that, then go for that paint. The brand Rembrandt Van Ryn used. Are you talking about the oil paint that Rembrandt used? The actual Rembrandt? Because if that's what you're asking, in 1600s, Dutch, they didn't have tubes then. They mixed their own paint. And Rembrandt was notorious for trying out all kinds of different things within his paint, like crushed up glass and all kinds of other stuff. Also, I love hearing what artists think or prefer: liquid, low viscosity, thick, high viscosity. Okay. So Rembrandt and M. Graham is low viscosity, a little bit closer to liquid. Thank you for that. I always get those mixed up. Just need to talk about it more often. Won't get it mixed up eventually. But I bought this whole set of M. Graham because I wanted paints that moved around a bit better. And I was coming, I think at that point, I was starting to get away from Gamblin. I don't know what Gamblin did. Eventually they changed up, how they manufacture their paint. And it's like, I call it constipated. Like you can barely get it out of the tube. It is so hard. It's terrible. I don't like it. The Rembrandt brand thing was a joke, LOL, because yes, it was the paint Rembrandt used, but at the same time, no. Oh, I see. Okay, I get it. Yeah. There's been so many people that look at Rembrandt or look at the amazing artists that they love, and they're like, well, in order for me to do that, I have to have their paint. I have to mix up that paint exactly with the Marosier medium or whatever that he used, and this is going to allow me to paint better. No, if it was that easy, everybody would paint like Rembrandt. They would just go to the store and go, hey, I'll just pick up the Rembrandt awesome paint. I don't want the John Singer Sargent paint. I prefer the Rembrandt way of painting, so I'll just pick up that paint and my paintings will look exactly like these two artists just based on the materials I use. I don't wish it was that easy. If it was that easy, if it was all about that, then I wouldn't even do this art thing. It would just be stupid simple. It wouldn't be this infinitely complex, amazing thing that we deal with all the time. I love the journey of it. So if you think that any material that you pick up, paint, brush, whatever, is going to make you a better artist, just stop. No. Pick it up for another reason. Say, I'm going to buy this because this painting needs this. And this paint may give that to me. Or you use a certain material because you're like, you know what? This is a lot of fun. I like working this way. And then use it that way. I mean, it does take experimentation where you try a bunch of different materials and things like this, but never, ever, ever, and I say this, but yet I still do it, buy materials to try and paint better, because it never works out that way. And yet I'm like the art store and I'm like, oh, Nicholas Uribe paints with this. I know I'm going to be a better artist if I use it. No, sorry. Not at all. I prefer, now to be specific on what I prefer, is I like paints with like a medium viscosity to them. The Winsor & Newton artist brand or the Winsor & Newton Winton brand have both the almost exact same viscosity. The Phoenix Artist Oils, which is comparable in price and everything to Winsor & Newton Winton, which those are hard to find right now, but it's a company that's kind of coming up. I like that brand a lot. I did a review on them. I have their paints. That's what I prefer, like a medium range. If you want paints that are like super thick, where you have to have like a hog's hair bristle brush that's really hard in order to move that paint around because it's so thick and chunky, Gamblin. That's Gamblin for you. But they're way too thick. Like if you want to paint with a palette knife and shovels, then Gamblin's your paint, right? Not sure about that hand. I am not sure. I need to simplify it a bit more. Simplify those shapes. You're not sure about something, you're a little confused about it. Think about the bigger shapes. Simplify it down. Make sure you have the values right within those larger shapes. And then if you feel like, okay, that's good, then go back into the detail. So important to always go back to those bigger shapes, the bigger idea of everything. Being so exact with this. Do not like what I just put down either. I just picked up a brush at random. I'm confused on what brushes have what color in them right now. And so I just pick up that brush and I'm like, oh yeah, I'll just throw it down. And then, here I am correcting it. Again, that's what this whole video is about, where I'm talking about doing it right the first time, slowing down and thinking about what you're doing. And that will always result in you moving through the painting, completing a painting faster, because it's more about accurately doing things correctly, whatever that means for you, the first time, and not having to make a lot of corrections. Already simplifying that is much better. Already. I removed a lot of variation in that value, and I'm thinking about just simplifying these shadow shapes within the knuckles and the fingers on that hand. Leaving a lot of this up to your viewer to make a decision on what they think that they're seeing, trusting the person that's looking at your paintings or that will look at your paintings to come up with, oh, that's a cool hand, for as simply as you can paint it. Trusting yourself that you can put it down simply and backing up and going, okay, yeah, that is a hand. It's just a few strokes, but it's a hand and it's fine. Leave it. Yeah, that's enough. What's really bothering me right now is the face. I got the hue there that I want. It's a bit warm. It's warmer, right? But I brought that value down for the background, and now it's just like standing out. This is all about like relative ideas. If you bring, the value up in the background, well, the value in that face needs to come up as well. So everything's lighter, but relative comparison between values within objects in your painting are going to be similar. So relative comparisons is what we're dealing with. Relatively, that's way off. It needs to still stay a bit warm. I'll bring some more yellow into it. That's a bit too warm. Now it's a bit too much yellow. Oh, too saturated. And then the value needs to be a lot lighter. Yeah, that might work. What I want it to be is pretty close to the background value, but just a different hue. Like all that separates the difference between the background color of paint and the face is the hue change or the saturation change, but pretty much the value is exactly the same. Lowering that contrast will push things back as well. So this should push the head or this little bit of the face that's showing back. What do I mean by pushing it back? Like its interest will reduce. It will not be so punchy. If I had like my highest value against my darkest value, that would be super high contrast. And that should be where our focal point is, because that's going to attract a lot of attention. This is how we control the people that are looking at your painting, control where they're looking at, or at least try to tell them to lead them through your painting and say, hey, no, this is what I want you to look at. This is the important part. That is not the important part. It needs to support my focal point, but not detract away from it. Support the idea that it's a face, but not detract away from like the back and the fold there in the hand. Just saying, okay, there's a face back there. I don't need more than that. I'm even going to soften it out some right now. Soften that. Yeah, definitely. And I love how the hair here blends into the background, but I want it to be a bit more warm. Small separation between the background, not in value, but again in hue and saturation, where we start to lose all that information. We're compressing value ranges, so we begin to lose information. Don't need to describe everything in its nth degree. We can lose it and allow the imagination of the viewer to come in and to say, oh, wow, that's a beautiful painting. Thank you for letting me into it and not only allowing me to interpret things and not having to describe it perfectly, exactly, photorealistically. And then there's always the caveat. I always say this. But if you're a photorealistic painter, go for it. Heck yeah, do that. Take it far. That's fine too. This is how I paint. This is how I enjoy artwork. There's no wrong way. There's your way. Find your way and paint your way. I'm like right up on the painting right now. Just right up against it. No. I'm getting just a bit too fiddly with this. That's my word for it. A bit too exact on things, I think. It feels right though. I feel good with all this exactness that I'm bringing in, especially all that texture in the clothing or the fabric, or whatever that is. Moving slowly. Moving slowly. Focusing. Even though I'm talking, still focusing. Hey, Awkward, how you doing? I heard some other artists say you should let the shadows breathe and have air. Do you know what that means? Oh, yes, I do. I really do. So the first thing, I mean, if you're an artist and you paint, hopefully you paint oil. Let me know if you paint in oil, because that's important for experiencing this, because you have to really experience it. And I can tell you how to experience it. I'll wait for your response if you paint in oil or not. And then I'll talk about it. I can even show you on this painting. Because I do love that expression of like air. I want it to feel airy, open. Open is a really good word for it too. And you'll see what I'm talking about. Oh, you paint in oil. Okay, cool. So first off, what you need is a non-absorbent surface, okay? And I'm going to go in detail on this because I like to. I like to be verbose on these things, okay? So sorry about that. But you have to have a non-absorbent surface. You could paint directly on like oil ground, or I'm painting on paper that has been coated in one coat of PVA size, or like Yupo paper. I did a bunch of paintings on Yupo paper, which is a plastic. It's a polypropylene. It's not even made out of wood, and it is super non-absorbent and super smooth. And what happens is the paint like sits on top of it, okay? And you can go in with scumbled paint, not necessarily like super, super thin, but not, doesn't have to be with a lot of medium where it's thinned out or transparent, but you can put it on thinly. And the non-absorbent surfaces allow you to do this, where you can take that paint, see that was put on yesterday, and I can scrape it all the way back to the surface, okay? And that is open. That is air. That breathes, okay? And what they're talking about is that transparency. In a lot of places, like we can soften that out. Maybe I should pick up one of my paintings. Is there one I can show you on that? But you have this kind of transparency show through, okay? A lot of Baroque painters like Rembrandt would do like a burnt umber wash in the background, or very lightly, draw out the entire painting in burnt umber, okay? And then paint over that. And so that's really thin. You can see how it's lightened up a bit. And that was like this kind of grayish color before, but when you have the light passing through the paint, hitting the paper, passing back through the paint, and then hitting your eye, it gets a bit more saturated. There's this really cool glow to it. And it's great in like super light areas, like right here. That's straight paper with the orange and stuff. Hopefully you can see that well. But you have to experience that. And that's really open. And then as you go into like the back here, like putting down very opaque paint will close that, or paint that, yeah, that is opaque. And it closes off everything with that paint, removes all the air between the paint and the surface. And it's all about like the exact color you put down. I'm going to put down this like very impasto stroke. And we get more into like all about the texture of this impasto. Rembrandt, there's the something wedding painting. And in that painting, somebody's wedding portrait, I think. The guy, the male looking figure that's in there has this sleeve, this shirt that they're wearing, kind of like this, like with a lot of texture. And it's got tremendous impasto all over it. But in the background of that painting, there's all this air, you know, where it's this very lightly applied, scumbled, or with a medium, transparent oil paint that it still says dark and still says background and still like a very low value, but it has that air to it. So transparency, basically, you know. But in that way, where it's on a lighter surface, like if you started painting on black, like you wouldn't get that effect. It would be different if you paint on white, or if you started on white and did a burnt umber over it and left a lot of that paper showing through and then painted on top of that, you'd get a lot of that air, a lot of that idea. Yeah. I don't really have any paintings recently that I did that's going to express that well, you know, more than what I've already told you or expressed there. Hopefully that's helpful. Let me know if that's understandable, or if, you know, I'm just too verbose and confusing with my language. But the reason why I asked if you're an oil painter is because, I mean, you can probably do this with other paints. I don't know. I have no idea. I'm an oil painter, right? But I want you to experience it, you know, get a very non-absorbent surface and try it. I always want to be very specific in that language too. Oh, cool. Thanks. Okay, great. Hopefully I'm glad that was helpful. I always want to be very specific with the language because there's a lot of local artists where we'll call it a slick surface. But I did a video and I called it a slick surface when I was talking about Yupo paper. And there was a lot of confusion because some people thought, oh, when it's slick, it's just smooth. And I was like, no, it's not just smooth. It's non-absorbent as well. Like Yupo paper is tremendously smooth. It's like glass as far as its smoothness. But it's also non-absorbent like glass as well. For example, you could have a very rough canvas, like you could paint on a burlap canvas or something like that, yet it would still be very non-absorbent, because if you coat it with something that makes it non-absorbent. So understanding the difference between absorption and non-absorption versus the smoothness or roughness of your surface, I think is really important. And it all depends on, you know, the effect that you want to get within your painting. And understanding that, you know, and this, you know, presupposes that you're planning out your painting process. This is a subject that needs that openness within it, and in certain places. So when you experience that openness of the paint, the transparency that you can, and the coloration, the glow that you can only get from that, once you experience that, you may start planning out your painting so that in certain areas, you make sure that no paint hits those areas and that the surface is prepared to show transparency through it. And I think that's important. All of your videos are helpful. I watch the ones when you use the Yupo paper. Oh, fantastic. Good. I really like Yupo paper. I do like it. It is hard to work with. It is very hard to work with, especially in shadow areas and light areas. Very nice because whenever you go to put down a stroke in the shadow areas, you pull up that paint and it changes the value. So the latest painting that I did on Yupo paper was a painting called Chevy, where I wanted to get the glow of that skin of the model. And I did an indirect process where I started it in burnt umber and built up all the shadows in burnt umber. That way, in the light areas, I could use that openness, right? Use the paper to change things. And then when I painted in the shadows, I already had a burnt umber on there. So if I pulled up paint, it would just show some of that burnt umber through, some of that airiness, and it improved, the painting tremendously. So preparing for how non-absorbent it is with an indirect painting, I think, was probably the best way to paint with Yupo paper, in my opinion. I would suggest to try it. If you want to go to the extreme between absorbent and non-absorbent surfaces, you could do, and I've done all, you could do a painting on raw paper, super absorbent, and then after that or before that, do a painting on Yupo paper, and you'll feel the difference. Put the paintings right next to each other, and you'll see the difference in color too, which is tremendous in saturation. Really changes as well. Not in a good or a bad way. There's no more good and bad. I keep saying that. No more good and bad. But like seeing those two differences will allow you to make decisions about your artwork that will help or hurt a painting, depending on where you want to go with it. Because a lot of paintings may require like, oh, I need to work this painting up on a very absorbent surface like raw paper because I want it to look like clay or something. Or, you're working up a painting that has a lot of dark colors in it, maybe black. So you paint on a non-absorbent surface so it pulls all that oil out of the paint and it removes a lot of the glare, so it makes it easier for you to paint. So that's like choosing a surface to paint on based on what would make it easier to see while you're painting. So within the process. And then you just do a gloss varnish at the end to bring all those colors back. Something I haven't tried recently is that. So I am going to remove what I did there. I wonder if you scrub, you can kind of see it there when I'm scrubbing into it. I'm putting paint on and moving it around in certain ways so that some of that lightness of the paper shows through and you get like brushstroke texture. I always talk about this a lot. It's, there's 100 ways to apply paint. I do like that. I want to bring it up into here. Really pressing hard. Not even, I'm working with the bristles that are closer to the finial of the brush rather than the end to scrape that off. And then back to the end of the brush to soften all those edges I created. Get some of that openness. Scrape it off. Soften it up. I don't want it to be so distracting back there that, it pulls away from what I want you to focus on, which is all this here. But it just adds a bit to it. If I'm going to do that, I need to do it now throughout the whole painting or the whole background in places. Because as soon as this dries, that's closed off. Like I can't get back to the surface any longer. That effect will be removed. It will be unachievable at that point. Yeah, just lightly. I even like when hairs of the brush like get into my paint. Just leave it in there. Okay. I've tried mineral paper. It's kind of the same as Yupo, but it's made of calcium carbonate. Whoa. That's interesting. I have never knew that that was a thing. Mineral paper. Can you describe the difference between like that and Yupo? Like what would I expect as an artist that has painted on Yupo, but I want to try calcium carbonate paper or mineral paper? What would be maybe the advantage or disadvantage to try each one? What's your opinion on it, like as far as difference? That's what I want to hear. What does it feel like to you? There's this halo here that I don't like. Can you see it? Do you see that halo? I don't like those halos. Bring those values closer together. Paint into the figure, into those edges. It's okay. I can bring it back if I want to. It's more important to remove this idea that I'm seeing here of, you know, looking at the halo of that paint rather than the figure or the background. Once you paint something and you're so careful with the edges, you'll create this kind of halo effect around things. See, I want to be careful. I don't want to mess up what I just did. And then it ends up messing up things because you're too careful. Creates that halo. And then it becomes a thing. The halo becomes distracting. It becomes part of the composition. It becomes something that you're telling someone to look at. When I don't want that to be a thing. So let's get rid of it. Like this dark area of hair. Less. Let's think about less up in there. Less. But be careful enough, Chris, that you don't just swipe right into the back of the figure. Because then I'd have to redo all that like subtlety that I spent forever on. Yeah, what does that look like? Yeah, still got some halo down here. Every time I say that, I think of the Beyonce song. The Halo song. I'm not even going to try and sing it right now. I know there's Halo repeated. Okay, Yupo is more slick. Mineral paper is a little bit more absorbent, so it makes the colors stain the paper more. Be careful with that slick word. So Yupo paper is more absorbent, probably a bit slightly more absorbent than the mineral paper. But as far as texture, are they both the same as far as texture? So just as smooth? Or does the mineral paper have more texture to it? But that what you said so far is super helpful. Thank you. Because that's given me this idea of what it's like to work with. Because the paper that I'm working on right now, which is a hot press watercolor paper coated with PVA size, is very similar to what you're talking about with the mineral paper, where it has a bit more absorbency than Yupo. Sorry, I'm usually really pedantic about everything. You do a few videos on, or a few hundred videos on YouTube about like materials and things like that. And you start to get really pedantic about stuff because you start getting these questions, and your language, or the language I didn't use, not your language, but my language that I use, wasn't so clear and it was confusing. So okay, I need to get better with the language I use. Yeah. So that's why I'm being pedantic with you right there. Apologizing. Okay. I'm at the point right now, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, okay, I need to get more black. That's number one. Being lazy. But I'm starting to think, when can I stop? Like, do I need more? Do I need more detail? Do I need more information? Remember, Carlos Duran said to John Singer Sargent, or something like this: if it's not indispensable, it's unnecessary. If you can remove it from your painting and the painting is just the same, just as strong without it, then it needs to be removed. So I'm thinking about what is distracting, what's unnecessary. Do I have to continue to go into detail? No. They feel almost the same, but mineral paper has velvety, vellum-like matte finish. Ooh. That sounds pretty cool. See, now you're selling it to me. Now you're totally selling that paper. Holy cow. Mineral paper. Now I'm going to have to try it out. I quit my job like at the beginning of the year, making all this money. And I'm like, no, it's time to be a full-time artist. I mean, I prepared for this. We saved up for forever to prepare for this. Finally made the move, right? I haven't made hardly any money in 6 months. And you're not helping, are awkward, getting me to buy more materials. It's all good. Don't feel sorry for me. We're doing okay. In about a year or so, or less, it might be a different story. And, I might go get a job as a garbage man or something like that. Tell you what, like when you're in the corporate environment, working in that environment for a while, like the last thing I want is to get another job where I have to make a lot of big decisions. I'm like, please I want remedial work where I can exercise and pick up heavy things. That's what I want to do now. Well, I mean, if I needed a job, right? I mean, what I really want to do is exactly what I'm doing right now, which makes me super happy, which is paint every single day. And think about helping other people with this beautifully amazing art thing. Try and give back and give knowledge as much as I can. And hopefully get other people to express themselves. Yeah, that's what I really like. I really want to do. I did a class. It was a drawing class recently, and that's where I really figured out, like, I love teaching. I really enjoy teaching. In person especially. Really enjoy it. Could talk about this stuff for days. Oh, it's pretty cheap too. That's why I tried it. Oh, fantastic. Okay, I need to write this down. Where's my phone? Get my to-do app and put it on, or else I'll forget about it. Buy some mineral paper and try it. So that'll be good. If I buy the mineral paper and it's fantastic, there's something else I can make a wonderful video about too. Maybe help out other people for other possibilities, especially if it's inexpensive. That's what I love. Like, you can find so many tools and materials. And what the hell was that stroke? That's way off. Finding like inexpensive tools and materials that you can make really good paintings from. I love that. I always say this, because I get, well, this is my opinion. I'm very opinionated. Obviously, I'm sharing my opinion, so take it with a grain of salt, right? Take it all with a grain of salt. I don't know what I'm talking about, and I do at the same time. At least I know what I'm talking about for me and the way that I work. But it really irks me when artists feel like they have to have, the quote unquote best, most expensive materials. Not irk me, I guess, but like I want to express to artists that feel like they have to go out and spend all this money on to oil paint, which you don't. It can be super inexpensive, right? And safe. It can be that. And you can make beautiful paintings. But let's look at some of the greatest painters in all of history. And you'll see that a lot of the materials were terrible compared to what we have now. Like some of our worst materials and paints are better than what Rembrandt painted with. And yet we still get so many people who are like, oh no, I need to find exactly what Rembrandt painted with. Or what's, I don't know, say any artist, right? Any amazing artist, and try and get those materials. And that will make me a better artist. No, go out and get the cheapest stuff possible. And guess what? That you'll build resilience, right? Being able to paint amazing paintings with the cheapest stuff out there, that's the artist that I want to learn from. Oh my God, it's absolutely beautiful. And that painting probably cost $5 to make. Yes. And then, you get the argument of, well, it's probably not archival. It's not going to last for 600 years. I don't care. I don't care if my paintings don't last for 600 years. I'll be gone, and everybody I'm talking to will be gone. Right? That doesn't, I'm not caring about that. You get the basic oil paint that you can get out there. Go to an art store, get like student grade paints, okay? And your paintings will last for 100+ years. Right away. Will there be yellowing, some adjusting of the coloration as you go through? Yes, exactly the same as all other paintings that are out there. Exactly the same. Things will change. Guess what? It will change. Over time, it will look a bit different. It will get dirty. It'll have to be cleaned, Things will have to change within your painting. I mean, look at the Sistine Chapel. It's still packed with 1 million people every single day by Michelangelo. And they cleaned it. People got upset that they cleaned it because it looks different now. It looks closer to the way it looked when Michelangelo painted it. A lot brighter, super brightness in those colors, like a saturation and things like this. And then even the people that were recovering the ceiling, took liberties and adjusted a lot of what was up there and tried to bring it back, and the idea was to restore. And this is all predicated upon this idea that your paintings are good enough, whatever that means, or they say something to enough people that people want to spend the time and effort to restore them, to keep them from, degrading in some way. And that's the most important thing. You've affected someone so much with your artwork that they're like, I want to keep this forever. And I want to employ people, archivists, that will keep those paintings exactly the way they are or close to the way they are for hundreds of years. That's what we should focus on first. Not like archival quality when we've barely picked up a brush. Well, I can't, I can't pick up a brush or start painting because if I paint with these materials, my very first painting won't last for 600 years. No one wants your very first painting to last for 600 years except for you, right? First, find your voice with the cheap materials. And then, after a while, then you're like, okay, I'm noteworthy. People love me. I'm selling my paintings like crazy. And then make the decision if you want to like move to like super archival ways of working. Yeah, that's my opinion. Yeah, that's why I love to when people experiment and use cheap materials that are still good, they work the same. Yeah, exactly. There's so much out there right now, so much amazing materials that don't cost a lot of money. It's more about, and I'm very careful with my language here. It's not about good or bad paintings anymore. That's not what it's about anymore, because there's no such thing. There's no such thing as a good or bad painting. Universally, like if you say it's good, it's good. If you say it's bad, it's bad. It's an opinionated thing. But what you can relate to the greatest artists out there is this idea that they have affected people with their voice, with their message. They have changed the history of painting with whatever painting they did, because it had this commentary to society that affected people on a deep emotional level. Do a search on a search engine, whatever search engine, greatest paintings in history. And one of the very first paintings that will come up will be Guernica by Picasso. It's one of the very first paintings. It's an amazing tour de force of artwork that changed people's ideas. You'll see Rothko, you'll see Van Gogh, you'll see Monet, you'll see a bunch of abstract artists, a bunch of impressionist artists. You'll see Leonardo da Vinci, the Mona Lisa on there. That's more advertisement, I think, than anything. It's not really a great painting. And these are the ones that have stuck around for, hundreds of years and will continue to stick around for hundreds of more years, because they've affected how we think and how we feel. That's what we should focus on. The art of wabi-sabi, the beauty of things that are imperfect, impermanent, and incomplete. Perfectly imperfect. Yes, perfectly imperfect, just like nature. We look at nature, we go look at the sky, the stars in the sky, and we don't complain that they're misorganized. They're not shaping how I want it to shape them. There's no way that we look at a tree and say, oh, that doesn't look like a right tree. That tree totally grew wrong. Just perfectly imperfect. The nature of stuff. I like that. Wabi-sabi. I always forget. I've heard about that before, but I forget about it. Isn't that also the art of, a broken vase or something? They'll put it back together with gold. Is that the same thing? I think it is. I could be totally wrong, but I love that idea. Like, expressing our own imperfections and seeing that as like one of the best things we can do. Our failures. It's how we grow. Fail forward, fail fast, fail wonderfully, and love failure, because that's how you get better. Move through this painting thing with feeling. Think about how things make you feel and put that first. I think that's super important, honestly. Okay. I'm getting close to finish on this. I feel really good about the painting now. I think this was a really good session. The last thing I want to do is this leg here. It's too red. I brought a lot of that red out of here, and I want to do the same with this leg. I love this idea of a limited palette as well. Not only is it cost less. Let's just scrape that red. Oops. Let's just scrape that red off. Not only does it cost less because you're just dealing with like basic colors, you know, the limited colors, but it forces you to learn color better. You know, how to mix color. If you want to learn color, don't go out and buy like all the colors from a paint brand. That will just confuse you for years. If you want to learn color, start with a simple palette. I mean, the Zorn palette is still based on primaries. The yellow is the yellow ochre. The red is the cadmium red. And the blue is your ivory black. Red, yellow, blue. You can make every color with that. Oh, thank you. So that is the same thing, wabi sabi and fixing the broken vases with gold. Love that idea. It's fantastic. Now I need more white. I think someone asked me on last stream, what do I use up most? White and black. I was right. You can tell I'm more of a toneless painter. I guess by saying that right away, I'm more of a toneless painter. Where it's all about grays and then just, you know, introductions of slight color within that. The opposite of that would be someone like Van Gogh. Crazy saturated. Definitely not a toneless painter. Well, his later works, he was tonal at the beginning. He loved Miro, would paint like Miro, very gray, very tonal-like. And then I actually even hated color, would get into arguments with people about color. And then moved to Arles. Arles, I think, is it Arles? I know that any French viewers are like, man, you totally screwed up that word. Moved to, you know, a certain place in France and began painting a different light. I really like the movie At the Gates of Eternity. It's another movie by Julian Schnabel, the artist from the 80s. It did plate paintings. That needs to be darker. It's grabbing too much attention. Too much attention. So Gates of Eternity is about Van Gogh. You've probably seen some memes about it. I'm not good at limiting my colors. I want to try using all of them. Yeah. That's most artists. It's okay. It's okay. Try using all of them. If you really want to understand all those colors, just start minimally, right? With a minimal palette. And then after a few paintings, I would say 5 to 10 paintings with like something like this, a 4-color palette, add on another one, you know? But within reason, of course, like if you're a landscape painter and I tell you to use the Zorn palette, you're going to be like, what? I need to paint a blue sky. You're not getting a blue sky with the Zorn palette. You have to add blue to it. You know, you have to add like an ultramarine, right? So there is that limitation. Like I'm not going to get like super saturated purples or super saturated blues or super saturated greens. Like all my secondaries are completely unsaturated with this palette. And that's fine. Like understanding that and limiting myself within that is, I think, expanded my ability as an artist. Again, talking again about resiliency, where you say, oh, in order for me to paint anything, I need all the colors. Or in order for me to paint anything, I need the most expensive stuff, right? Cheap paints, minimal colors will teach tremendous resiliency within this whole painting idea. And I should not have dipped into that black. I did not want black there. Actually, no, I did. I did want black. I'm getting mixed up as I'm talking. Okay. The funny's fun. I'm very gray, crazy saturated, more gray. This is like depends on the day, right? One day you're super gray, and then you're crazy saturated, then you're like more gray, or maybe it's like within the same painting. No, more saturation. No, more gray. No, more saturation. No, more gray. You know, if it's all put in the right place to say what you're trying to say, to convey that emotion within that painting, you put gray in the right place, and that saturated color is even more saturated. Like it goes off the charts saturation. Like you look at a Van Gogh, like later stage Van Gogh. I always keep bringing up Van Gogh because he's a very saturated painter, but you can't really tell how saturated those colors are because there's not a lot of gray around, right? It's just very saturated. Still beautiful paintings, you know. No rules in art. No rules. Number one, no rules. I do like the bounce between. Oh, this is a great tutorial. Thanks. Oh, I appreciate that, Funny. I appreciate that. I talk about all kinds of things during the stream. Every stream that I've been doing lately. I like to try and keep what we're talking about, you know, directed at what I'm doing or what's happening. And so let's get back to that real quick. Let's talk about what I'm doing here. So where's my focal point? Chris, where's your focal point? Always reminding myself, where's my focal point? I wish the video looked better. It looks terrible. Anyway, focal point is the hand in this fabric. It was supposed to be more of the back, but all the sharp edges in this fabric is really taking on the focal point. It's really grabbing all the attention, and that's fine. I like that. So anywhere away from that, like this leg here, I want that to be there. I like how that looks. And you can even look in my reference. Like it needs to be a lot darker. That lighter area needs to be darker. I need to bring it down in value and make it a bit more gray as well. Soften the edges because softness pushes back, attracts less attention. Compress the value range will cause less attention. Grayness, less attention. So thinking about all those things will push this leg backwards. When I say backwards, I don't mean like distance. I mean like attention in the brain. It's not jumping up and down and saying, hey, look at me, right? If I wanted that, I would do high contrast, dark against light, like here, very sharp edges, as saturated as I could get it, super light to super dark right next to each other. All of those things attract attention. And if I want to do the opposite of that, I just think about those fundamentals that we deal with: hue, saturation, value, edges, all of those things. And I just do the opposite of it to push it back, to say, no, don't look at that. I'm directing the painting, directing you as the viewer to look at certain things. I'm composing. I'm trying to make some kind of statement here, right? I'm trying to tell you a story. I brought you here into this painting, and now it's my job and my responsibility to lead you around the painting, to tell you what's important, to tell you what's unimportant, and to move you through the painting like that. At least that's the way I feel. I love a lot of hyperrealism that looks exactly like a photo. But at the same time, if you're not taking that to a certain level where you're trying to give me some kind of statement, right? Beyond, hey, this is a photo and look how awesome look how much skill I have to be able to paint this exactly like the photo. I get bored unless it's something more than that. I think it has to be something more than that. course, that's my opinion on this, right? You know, opinions are like buttholes. They all stink. Darken that up. See, there's this reflected light that, do I need it? No, I don't think I do. Destroy that edge. Blend it in with the background. Less. It's there. It's a leg. We know it's a leg. We still know it's a leg, right? How much, how much information can I take away from this and it still look like a leg, right? Or maybe it was someone that isn't part of the stream looking at the reference would say, what the heck is that down there? I've had that happen before, where I've removed so much of the information, pushed it back so much that people are like, what is that? I don't understand what that is. And then there's been paintings where I'm so afraid of, what people are going to think. Oh, that doesn't really look like what I'm trying to simplify it into. And then I'm like, no one's ever going to get it, but I'm going to leave it like that anyways. I'm going to try and be brave and leave it like that anyways. And then someone, people will look at it and go, oh, wow. Yeah, I know what that is right away. There's always that kind of play in between, success and failure. It's all part of it. Pushing, if you want to push your ideals and understanding of things, there has to be a bit of failure in there. Learning a new material, you're painting on a new type of paper or something, or trying different paints. You're going to be like, oh, it's just uncomfortable. I'm not used to this. You're going to fail a little bit and then figure it out eventually, right? It's going to be part of it. Every single little failed painting that you have is telling you something about how to be a better artist in your way, whatever that way that is. And also, every single failed painting that you have, quote unquote, failed, there's somebody out there that will absolutely love it and think it's the best thing ever. I can't tell you how many times I've been like, I'm not going to show that painting because I don't think it's very good, or it's this little tiny thing. I was just trying to do some compositional stuff with it. And then I end up showing it, ended up putting it up on my website, and it's the first thing that sells. Or paintings that I'm like, this is going to sell right away. It's the best painting I've ever done. And then it sits on my website, or it sits in a gallery forever and never sells. So I just give up on that. I just like, you know what? I don't know what people want. I don't care about what people want. I know that what I like and what I dislike, but I'm going to socialize and share everything as much as I can, because there's 8+ billion people on the planet. And if I showed my painting to enough of those people, if you showed your paintings to enough of those people, someone would love it and buy it and totally go out of their way to get it. Socializing our work, I think, is super important. It's hard for a lot of people to do that, especially, we're opening ourselves up to this thing where it takes a skill level, and we're being vulnerable enough to show it. And within that vulnerability is a possibility of, critical review, people not liking something. But also within that vulnerability is our place to open up and to grow. So we do it. We put ourselves out there. We brace for the negativity, the negative responses. And most of the time they don't come. Most of the time afterwards, we think, man, I should have done this earlier. Hyperrealism is boring to me. I like how your art can look realistic, but not so detailed. Thank you. I know a lot of other artists are so much better at it than I am. I'm working hard to get better at it, definitely. Shut up, Chris. Just say thank you. I tend to do that often. But yes, I love that idea, 30 feet away from a painting and it's a mountain or a beautiful figure. And then you get up close to it and you're like, that is just like brushwork and beautiful paint. Years and years ago, I was at the National Gallery in London. Amazing gallery. If you're ever in London, I love that gallery because it's right next or pretty close to, and this was years ago. They could have changed. I have no idea. It's pretty close to the National Portrait Gallery in London. And you can see a lot of John Singer Sargent in there. You'll see, oh crap, Las Meninas and that artist. Oh my gosh, I can't remember. Velasquez. You'll see Velasquez. You'll see like the greats of all the greats, right? Just everywhere. But that was when I was like deep into John Singer Sargent, just really loving everything. And I think a lot of representational artists go through this, the Sargent phase. And it's hard not to because how amazing of a painter he was. But just looking at a hand and just being so what's the word for it? Blown away by how he described a hand and all its fingers in like 6 brush strokes with a ring on it and stuff like that. And you're like, with a ring on a finger and everything. And you're like, what? Let me back up. That's a beautiful hand. Let me go forward. It's just a bunch of paint. And yeah, that got me. I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. Okay. I feel like I'm just playing with this now, not making any changes. Like if you get to the point on your painting, I got this from Nicholas Uribe. Everything that you're doing on your painting, every little stroke, this is all about, the title of this stream, all about slowing down, going slow to go fast, basically. Every little thing that you put on your painting that you do needs to have some kind of effect. You think, okay, I'm trying to do X, and then I put it down with that brush stroke, and then you think, did it affect my painting in the way that I wanted? No, it did not. It didn't do anything. And then you think, oh gosh, what am I doing? What am I thinking about? How do I need to change up? How do I need to do this differently? So that everything that you put down has some kind of effect on the painting. I'm not going to say positive or negative because it really depends on your purpose for that stroke of paint. But when you get to a point on the painting where you're like, I'm just playing around. Like I'm not making any conscious movements that affect the painting in any way, then it's time to kind of step back and see if you're done. Like maybe you're just done with the painting and what you're doing now is not really improving it. It could be hurting it at the same time. I could be hurting the painting by continuing on. I'm going to do what I always do. I'm going to step back. I'm also going to turn this to 4K so you can see the actual painting a little bit closer to how I see it. Whew. Yeah, I'm happy with that. I'm very happy with that. See, yeah, on the 4K, I think you can tell. So it does downsample to 1080p, but at least you get more pixels coming your way. You know, so I think it looks better, but I can't record in 4K because every 4K camera has a recording limit or overheats and dies. So this one has a 30-minute recording limit. Yeah, I'm happy. Bunny's got a question, an odd question. Can the unfinished works... Oh, my cat's in the way. Hi, kitty. It's his birthday today. This is Vincent. He's 4 years old today. Come here, puppy. Come here. You can get on my shoulder while I answer Funny's question. You get on my shoulder while I answer your question. Odd question. Can the unfinished works of the past on friend be finished by a friend? Is it weird to even think of doing this? Unfinished works of a past on friend be finished by a friend. So what I think you're saying there, sorry, some of the language is getting a little bit probably not translating well, but like if I work on a painting and it's finished and then like you buy it and then you work on that painting after you've bought it and, you know, maybe make some adjustments to it, make it better or different in some way. Let me tell you a story about that. It's actually an interesting question. I'm done with this painting, by the way, super happy with it. You know, done everything that I could on it. We got 30 minutes before it shuts off. Years ago, I was finishing up college in a university and I was doing printmaking. And I really had a lot of fun with lithography, I think it was, with a big stone. Is that lithography? I forget. It's been so long. Where you would do a stone and do printmaking, blah, blah, blah. And I was doing a bunch of figurative work of my wife at the time. And I actually sold one of the prints. This is like forever ago. And I sold it to someone that worked at the art store, like one of the head guys at an art store. And this was in Florida. And I went back to that art store one day, like maybe weeks or months later. And, you know, it was black and white print of this figure I was so happy with. And he's like, oh, let me show you what I did to your print. You know, it's not like a print that you print on like a printer. This was me making this print from a stone and, you know, putting down the ink and putting down the paper and running it through the press. And I did maybe 15 or 20 prints of it and that was done, you know. And he had put like marker or something, put color on it. And, you know, right now I look back at it and laugh. But at the time I was so angry. I was like pissed. I was like, no, what are you thinking? No, that's awful. But now, because I do so much artwork, but you know, I have so many paintings. Like, I'm like close to 3,000 separate pieces of artwork that I've done in the past 13, 14 years, right? And this could be like drawings and things like that. I track it on my website. It's not like finished paintings, like beautiful paintings. I mean, 90% of those are probably in the garbage, right? But I've done so much work and I've failed so much that the preciousness of this work is kind of left. So when someone buys my work, actually when it leaves my house, when I put it for sale, like it's like, okay, I'm done with that. I'm already moved on. And especially when someone buys it, like their house could go up in flames. And I'd be like, okay, well, whatever. I got pictures of the painting, you know, that's fine, whatever. Or they could take it and they could paint over it. Or they could sell it at a thrift store, you know, or give it away at a thrift store. I would laugh my butt off if I went to a thrift store and I saw some paintings of mine at the thrift store. I'd totally buy them for a couple bucks and then try to resell them or something. That'd be kind of fun. So if I sold some artwork to some friends of mine, especially friends artists right now, and they were like, hey, guess what I did to your painting? Like I painted on top of it and I like it better. I would be like, "Oh, that's pretty awesome. You go. You do that. Heck yeah." So I think it really depends on the person, right? I love the idea of, having a bunch of artists that get together and, everybody starts their painting and then you call out switch and then everybody switches to other paintings. And then after about, 30 minutes, you call switch and then everybody moves up again. It's like a combination of work together. I think that's a great idea. Yeah. I will say though, if, like I bought Nicholas Uribe's painting. I wish I could buy all his paintings, right? So I got a painting of his up there, which I just love. Um, it was the very first painting he did when he started his Patreon, Our Painted Lives. And I spent probably $500 or $600 on the painting, and I would never touch that in a million years. Like never. Like I don't even feel like I'm even like that would be like sacrilegious. Yeah, it would be, because he's on this pedestal up here, right? Like, no, I would not even touch that with oil paint. Heck, I'm looking at it right now. Be really, really careful with it as I move it around. But anyway, at any point in time, if he's like, Chris, mail that painting to me, let me paint over it, I'd be like, hell yeah, let me mail all of my paintings to you and you paint over them and then send them back so I can learn from it. Yes, please. Totally. So it depends on the person. Definitely depends on the person. I really like this painting. I think I could do a few more in this kind of vein, this idea, like just to repeat the reference that I'm using is from a website that I purchased. I purchased this set of images from satinezilla.com. Now I'm going to show this. I think the front of this site I can show. I have to be very careful on Twitch when I show things because of the rules that they have as far as the human body and showing certain things. So satinezilla.com, the specific pack that I'm working from on this one is called Tenebrism, Tenebrism. So satinezillah.com. satinezilla.com. Definitely 100% support them and their amazing photography. And if you buy them, they're very inexpensive for, thousands of pictures that are beautiful. There is nudity on that site. So if you're sensitive to nudity within figures, do not go to that site. Okay? I hope you're hearing my cat purr. He's in my lap. Come on, Bubby. We're going to say goodbye and happy birthday to Mr. Vincent. Say hi. Say, I love you. Happy birthday, Mr. Vincent. And his sister, LaFay. It's their birthday today. They're 4 years old. Happy birthday, Bubby. I love you. Oh, Awkward says, I heard Nicholas Uribe say the same about his paintings, how he doesn't get precious about them. Yeah, 100%. I probably take a lot from Nicholas Uribe. Don't look at me, look at my cat. Thank you, Awkward. Vinny, Awkward says, happy birthday. Yes. Okay, I'm going to go feed him. and enjoy the rest of my day. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for your comments. Check out my website, chrisbevan.com. Sign up for my newsletter. It's probably one of the best ways to support me. And soon I'm going to be releasing my Painter's Path, which is an online learning platform where I start at the very beginning of everything oil painting and then work everything through that. So chrisbevan.com. Bye-bye.